The French seam is what we call a specialized seam. It is done on fabrics that are lightweight and where you want a very secure finish. And so it might be used on a party dress like with a chiffon or a silk. If you look at your pillowcases are also constructed with a French seam. The French seam is actually a seam within a seam. But we still only use the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance for the entire seam. So accuracy is very important on this step. The first step is to make the initial seam, which this is going to be different from your seams that you have done before. You are going to place the wrong sides of your fabric together. Since we only can use 5/8 of an inch in totality, our first seam allowance is going to be 2/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. You can measure that with your plate on your sewing machine. I would suggest as well that you mark it with your seam gauge. If you have a dark fabric, you can use chalk. We have the dressmaker chalk in the drawer. If you have a lighter fabric, you can use the disappearing ink. I would encourage you to not use ink pen or felt tip pen unless you want a permanent marking. We will then stitch our 2/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch seam in, just as we normally do. Reverse stitch at the beginning and the end. Press the seam open. We are then going to fold the fabric so that that fabric seam is actually now concealed. We're going to fold it right on the seam, and then we are going to press it right sides together, and we are going to stitch 3/8 of an inch. Starting at the top, reverse stitch, stitching to the end of the seam, reverse stitch. As you look at this now, you see no raw edges. It is a seam within a seam, which means we have actually double stitched it. That would prevent any kind of raveling and provides for a stability for any garment or piece of household goods that is going to have a lot of abrasion. So for example, your pillowcases, they get a lot of abrasion, and so that's why they are done with a French seam. The seam is always pressed to the right unless your instructions state otherwise. We only do the French seams on seams that are going to be exposed. And so if you are making a garment that is a fragile fabric, you would certainly use it on the side seams of the garment, the shoulder seams, the skirt seams. But in areas like your facings, or where you set this, if you have a sleeve, if you're setting that in to your arm side, you would not use a French seam because it would be much too bulky. So it's used on the exposed seams only. Let's review the instructions one more time so that you're sure that you finish up with the seam that is supposed to be on the inside, on the wrong side of the fabric. We start out by putting the wrong sides of our fabric together, stitching 2/8 or 1/4 of an inch. Press it open, press it to the side. We then stitch 3/8 of an inch, reverse stitching at the beginning of the end with the intent that the seam finishes up on the inside of the fabric.